Okay, so friends, I do not want to hold back our panel. Our panel is extremely exciting. I'm super excited that they're here tonight. We have three very diverse, very power-packed women that come from various organizations and represent various sectors of the population that we support as Democrats. And so I'm going to call them up and bring them up. We're going to start with Melissa Villegas, who is one of the co-leads of Moms Demand Action.
Hold on 1 second.
Oops.
I'm going to switch over to the live stream.
Oh. Do, 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 do. Do I start talking now? Okay, very cool. We are super excited that Melissa is here. Moms Demand Action is a nationwide organization that stands for the prevention of gun violence, and we're super excited that you're here. We also have Ying Matties. Ying Matties is the leader of CARY, which supports our LGBTQ youth. And she specifically works here in Howard County. Am I correct? Yes. And we also have Dr. Robyn Scates. Dr. Robyn Scates is a lawyer, a professor, and she is also our nominee to fill the District 1 seat for the Board of Education. And so I know you guys are super excited because between all three of these power-packed ladies, we are representing so many of our good democratic values. So I'm going to give you a second to welcome them into this space. I feel like this is like talk show style. All right, so friends, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask a series of questions, and I just want you guys to share from your heart. Sounded very Oprah. Okay, so the first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your story? How did you become involved in your various sectors?
Not to take it too far back, but I'll kind of go back to starting in the military when I got out of high school. And the reason for that is I think it was very formative in how I came to view life. I started as a volunteer in the Army. I was there for 7 years, and I didn't really know what was happening in the world, and I didn't vote for the first few years. And then the more I got exposed to being overseas and having 9/11 happen while in Germany and having people come up and question our policies while overseas, I found myself having to be accountable for everything, kind of, and realizing I needed to know what I was doing, know what organization I was a part of, have a firm understanding of why I wasn't voting and why I should start voting. And I feel like when I got out, I had a much better head on my shoulders for being a responsible adult, I guess, as you could say. A few more years of working, I've had 3 kids. With my second child, Sandy Hook happened, and 5 years passed, and I didn't know what was happening in the background with Moms Demand Action or anything. But after 5 years and he was getting ready to go to kindergarten, I realized I wasn't doing anything, and I had been telling him, you know, when there's a problem, you need to do something. And I wasn't doing anything. And a friend recommended Moms Demand Action, and I realized that was an area I could do something. That there was a group that was accepting of, I didn't have a lot of time, I couldn't leave my kids home a lot, but I could at least come to some meetings and learn more information. So that's how I got involved with Moms Demand Action.
Thank you for having me. I think for me, starting CARY was a very, very personal story, and also kind of an activism stemming out of anxiety. One of my kids came out to us when they were in college as pansexual and non-binary at the time. I know Google already existed at the time. This wasn't that long ago. But it wasn't so much of Googling those terms as in understanding the meaning and the life associated with the terms. People who have identified with these terms. What does it mean to them? Are they accepted by the society? And so I had so many questions when this is my own kid coming out to us. And I have many questions in my head, but the only question that came out of my mouth was, would I still have grandkids? And to me, that was so, so important because I love my kids, but who doesn't want to be grandparent because you get to spoil them? And then my kid reassured me, said, Mom, you either have grandkids the old-fashioned way or we'll adopt some. So that was the end of that conversation. But the anxiety came later when I started to learn about how this was 5 years ago. People in the LGBTQ community face all kinds of, sometimes imaginable and sometimes unimaginable hurdle, and not all of these kids, I think the most heartbreaking part of it is not all the kids were accepted by their family, and for those of us who are parents, it's really hard to imagine having your kids pushed out of a family just because they said, Mom, I'm gay, or I'm trans, but it is happening. And the statistics are sobering, and one of the first things I saw was in the kids experiencing homelessness, a quarter of them were LGBTQ and is related to being forced out of a family. And so it's a sort of an anxiety always looming in the background, even though my kid wasn't in school anymore and they were, kind of young adult. But I thought, what can I do other than offering my unconditional love and support and let them know in words and action that we support them. But also something that I could do is to tap into my strength. And I think, like Melissa said, getting involved in an organization, you do have to be practical, to have a wild dream. I'm going to start this and to end all world's problem. That's not realistic. It's not going to be sustainable. For me, I thought my strength is I know the school system inside and out. I've been a school system volunteer at individual school level and the system level for 20 years. So I know how to reach out to the 77 schools, which are almost like 77 fiefdoms, how to make sure the community and the individual schools can become a better place for all these kids. And when we have an educational institution that's better and more accepting of young kids who are of all different identities, kids like mine who are not in that space will have a better environment.
And I talk loud, so do I need the mic? I don't want to.
They will let us know online.
If it's too loud. Okay. So thank you for having me. I got an opportunity to speak with Jessica, and I was really just blown away of just her authentic self over the phone and the spirit. So I definitely can imagine you in these meetings. So again, thank you for inviting me. I guess my story probably just use it. It's not that loud. Okay. 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 So I would say that probably my journey, I'm gonna go back probably further than everybody else. To start it at 7. So at 7 years old, I decided that I wanted. It's a number of things that happen at 7, but that's the golden age for me. I decided that I wanted to be an attorney. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be an attorney is because I wanted to fight and support anybody that was being mistreated. And so with that in mind, we had, come to class and tell what you're going to be. And my teacher told me that you better rethink that. You're probably going to need an attorney. And that was in public school. That was not in Howard County. But that's what I was told. I knew better not to tell both of my parents who are educators that, because they would have been up at that school. But I didn't tell them that, and I took it, and I think that it was really my goal that I wanted to prove her wrong. I remember the teacher, I remember the class, I even remember what that teacher was wearing. And so from then on, my decision was that it wasn't going to be anything that was going to defer me from reaching my goals. And so along the way, I met a number of people that were just, to me, just tremendous champions, advisors that would just guide me. So with that one bad experience, I met educators who who were just, again, my champion. Now, one of the things that I didn't know from that teacher back then, because we don't do this anymore, right? We don't put children in different, different sections, right? We don't have like a top tier of students, right? We know we don't do that, right? That's not what you're supposed to do. So that teacher, unbeknownst to me, had put me in a lower category because they did it at that time, right? So I found this out because I was in Dr. Franklin, and I am not good with names, but for some reason, I remember people that truly meant a lot. I was in Dr. Franklin's class. He was an English teacher. And I was in there with some young people, and he looked and he said, "You're not supposed to be in this class. You know, you should be in a GT and in a first level class. Why?" So he went down to a teacher and said, "She needs to be in your class." And in front of me, I'm a child, in front of me, an argument went back and forth. And she said, "No, she can't handle this." And he said, "Yes, she can," right? Now, the people in that class didn't look anything like me, but they were the top of the school. And he argued, and he said, "She can handle it." Now, he looked at me because I'm very talkative, and that's why, you know, sometimes teachers don't like that. I like to help people that don't know what they do. I was like, "This is the answer." And the teacher's like, "I'm the one that's teaching," okay? And so a lot of teachers don't like that. And so that's how I always was. And so I went into class, and because I heard this, I was smart enough to know, I'm going to show her. And so I got a top grade. She came to me and apologized to me because I got the top grade in there. And she took me back down to Dr. Franklin and said, "Thank you." That changed my life, right? Because now I'm ranked in this high thing. So I got to be in programs that I would have never been in because I'm smart, right? And one of the things in my mind was that that should never happen to a child, right? That should never happen to a child. So I've been fortunate to be in positions to help those children that people discount and say that they're not good, that they can't have, and they shouldn't be here. And so I've been in those positions, and I've been very fortunate of that. I've worked in Baltimore City to help youth that, again, people said they're bad, they're not going to amount to anything. And I love being able to work with children like that because I get to know them, and I get to see what the trigger is that will allow them to be successful. Because I believe, and maybe because I have to believe in my heart, that's just my person, that everyone has the ability to be successful. And so I got to do it at in Baltimore City Schools. I got to do it when I worked with as a VP of General Counsel with with College Summit. Which is Peer Forward, that they work to increase the college-going rate of low-income youth in America. So I helped them with their different programs. I got to do it for Maryland State as the director of the Maryland Legal Services Program, which we provided representation for children, youth that come into the system because they are abused and neglected, and making sure we had programs to support it, and also people that represented them that know that, you know, they don't live on an Ivy Street. You don't get to go into Bel Air, you know, in the Bel Air and the mansions. You're going into some places where these kids have to live because they're in the foster care system, but they still deserve someone fighting for them. And now I get to do it at Morgan State University, which is where I went to university and where teachers were very powerful in my life and believed in me and poured in me and have been supportive of me in all my career. So that's how I got started, and what drives me into making sure that I want to make a difference with our young people, not just because I believe in them, but I believe in what they will do and who they're going to be in our community. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Woo! Oh my goodness, there's so much that I want to know. Like, I have so many questions, and maybe because I am a teacher, maybe it's because I talk a lot, I will tamp it down. All right, so what do you want everyone who's online and in this room to know about your organization, about the work that they're doing, and how can people be supportive of this work?
I guess the first thing would be having a firm understanding of what Moms Demand Action is, because even if it's not for you today, you don't have kids in the school system today, you don't think that violence can happen here in Howard County, if you know what it is and you understand that it's nationwide, that it's all 50 states, that it's for, you know, people of color who are really hit in communities around the country, for transgender, whatever way you realize that it can hit somebody that you care about, you can pass that information on. So we have met people who are grandparents from South Carolina, and they thought they never had to worry about this. And they had an active shooter drill at school, or they had a real gun come into the school, and they say, now I'm involved. If you know about the organization and you can pass on the information, even if not for yourself, and you don't want to get involved, you can let somebody know. If you know a survivor of gun violence and you're in Baltimore and you want to explain to them, did you know that there's a survivors network, a group that will help you find the right therapy, help you find somebody to talk to who's been in this situation, help you have a group that you can rely on. Who we have once a year a program for Wear Orange to raise awareness in the community about gun violence. You can pass on that information. So we understand not everybody can come to meetings, not everybody can make it to Annapolis. Whatever you can do, we accept you with open arms. Pass that information on along. Know who you're voting for. Let your friends know who you're voting for. Say, if this is important to you and you tell me it is, but you don't have a lot of time, look at our candidate list. Look at who is for common sense gun reform. So there's 1,000 ways to get involved. You can send a check to every town, or you can just show up and vote and make sure you know who you're voting for. And look at those candidates. They get held accountable every year. We look at their record on how they voted, on if they voted in accordance with gun sense reform or not. And we follow up with that, and we make sure that we let everybody know what's going on. So I guess education and awareness, and spreading it, and seeing yourself as you don't have to be a leader to spread information and awareness. Like a lot of things, it can be a friend to a friend, it can be you to a teacher at the school who's feeling overwhelmed with shooter drills. I let a teacher know the other day, did you know that there's a bill right now in the House that's supposed to help make these less traumatic for the kids? And she was so happy. She's like, I had no idea. And I'm like, there's bills, there's people working on this to make these events less traumatic. And she goes, it should just be the teachers. The kids have no part of this. So spreading that information is, I think, the number one thing. Learning and then spreading it.
Well, I would echo that, because I think for a lot of issues, it really is, people don't feel comfortable talking about it, or they don't feel like they have time to get to know about it and learn more. Not everyone, you know, sets out the day wanting to be an activist, being an expert on any subject. And for LGBTQ issues, there's a particular sensitivity sometimes, because we live in a community where most people are very open-minded. But even in Howard County, we do know there's a small percentage of the population who, because of their background, whether it's religious or cultural or all kinds of background, you know, it's hard to change people's mind. But there are ways to do that. And our focus for CARY organization, as I said, we started with our strength, not just my strength, but the few founders of this group. Strength really is, we have been very, very closely working with the school system. We know how to reach out to the principals and the central office staff, and what the policy level can be changed, and what committees you should be involved in, and how to get that kind of a connection made through the entire school community. So our focus and strength has been partnering with the school system. And I would like to see CARY to outgrow the current board members, to be an organization that's sustainable, but with that connection with the school system being stronger and stronger. It's kind of hard to summarize in maybe a 2-minute speech, but I think you can think of it as an infrastructure that's irreversible, because once you build an infrastructure and a culture in individual school level and at district level that people see supporting LGBTQ issue not as a controversial issue anymore, it's a human rights issue, it's a mental health issue, it's an equity issue, and all kids and staff members and families, we do have family members, believe it or not, they're kids who have 2 dads, and they are in elementary school. So we can't start talking about these things until high school, because some people are not comfortable. So have that kind of infrastructure and cultural shift that can be shifted back very easily, even with a different school board member that we don't always can't count on, always have allies. It's really, really important to be involved in candidates and elections, all those things, but we can't guarantee that. But if you have an infrastructure built, curriculum in place, staff training in place, and an understanding of these issues as almost a second nature, people feel comfortable talking about it, then it becomes much, much easier to build on it. In the past, I would say in the last few years, we have noticed things changing. And it's in small and big ways. One of our most significant I wouldn't call it legislative, advocacy achievement last year was to add a LGBTQIA plus specialist position in central office. That was the first one in Howard County. It's also the first one in Maryland. And I can't underscore how important to have a designated person there. And that goes right into the line of building an infrastructure, because if you don't have at least one designated staff member that people know this is the leader who's knowledgeable about these issues and the go-to person, then it's kind of scattered. We have a lot of allies, all different places. But to have a person there that can take leadership position and have enough power and the trust of the top leadership, which she does, and that's tremendously helpful and sustainable. So to push for that kind of position is one example of you really do need to build this infrastructure. And I think everyone in this room understands. To build a movement, you can't just do random things here and there. Think about sustainability, think about systemic change, and think about organization. That's what we try to focus on. So how can everyone be involved in? Find out what our activities are. Join CARY. You can go to CARY HoCo.org, or you just Google CARY, Community Allies of Rainbow Youth in Howard County. You will find us. There are all many different ways to get involved at organizational level, and a lot of people in the room are either parents of school kids or former parents, or you know someone whose parents, your neighbors, your friends, their kids are in the schools. Get involved in your own individual schools, because there are a lot of different things and issues happening in individual schools. We all have the power to make that voice to support these kids stronger, every single one of them, because I see CARY as a county-wide level, parents and allies getting together, supporting each other, but I'm hoping that individual schools could have these little mini CARYs, and anyone can start that. If you're a parent, especially if you're a parent of a LGBTQ child, feeling, how do I handle the situation when our principal is not super supportive? Who do I talk to? Who is the trusted ally in the building? And that's the kind of information you can get from other allies in the building. So I guess that's one little homework, that you can go to your school and think about that person, and then find out more about our activities online.
Not being one particular organization, but I guess in the role that I hope and truly hope that I will move forward with, I would just love to hear from you, hear from what's happening in the community. I'm going to tell you, I absolutely love that I came to this meeting and that I have some young people in here, that you are making sure that you are exposing them, which is so key in learning, to what you do here, which is so important. I can tell you that I run into freshmen that come in that really don't understand the political systems. They don't really understand what the Democratic Party is, or the Republican Party, or independent. They don't even know options. And so, again, we know it starts young, and in Howard County, we are applauded for the great job we do when we see the statistics of how well we're doing. And I think it's because we do have concerned citizens within Howard County. And so what I would say is continuing to do it. I've been speaking to so many people, and a lot of people are repeating that they see the same people over and over and over again when it comes to meetings and those types of things. So I would encourage you, whether you have children in the system, if you know children in the system, that reach out. And definitely, again, if I am so honored to be confirmed, then please reach out to me. I'm not just saying that. I think Jessica can tell you that. I want to hear that, because I do believe that every child, just like my fellow panelists have said, every child has a right to learn in an environment that is going to be supportive of where they are. And I definitely know we can do that in Howard County, and I definitely want to foster that. But one way of doing that is making sure that we're inclusive. It's not about what I see, what I think. It's about me connecting with the community and understanding what the needs are. And that's the only way that I can be effective. So thank you again for inviting me.
All right, ladies, what I want you guys to do is I want you to think of what the ideal Howard County would look like from your lens. What would it look like? What would you see? What would people experience? From your lens, what would be the ideal? Oh, thank you. But you're still not getting a car. If you're online and you have questions, put them in the chat.
I mean, I don't think I would limit it to Howard County. It's what I would want for every community, because I feel like I'm lucky to be here, and I know that unfortunately luck does play a part in your safety and how you're treated, in socioeconomic luck, all kinds of things that should not be what position you where you are. So what I'd hope for is that kids go to school and feel safe, that they walk through the doors and the parents could walk in after them and feel safe, that the teachers can teach them and they have the resources to ask for the extra counselors, which is one of the biggest things I've heard this year from our PTA, from our principal, from our counselors, is that they don't have enough, that they see the kids coming in with anxiety, special needs, and they have one counselor for 5 schools, and that one counselor is there for one day to meet with all of the kids, and you see kids who have extra needs who are being, cordoned off into an area to be kind of managed without the proper supports. So I guess kids is the first thing, because I think that's a group that doesn't have the ability to go to the polls. They don't have the ability to stand out and protest. If they do, it's because we're helping them, but that's a group that can't advocate in the way that they should be able to, so we're here for them. And I think that goes with everybody, whether it's LGBTQ, equity, the kid who's not being seen as smart enough or enough in any way, smart, color, anything, have enough money to pay for the food at the lunch, the snack machine, whatever it is I start with the kids. If they're not safe and they're not being treated well, they're the ones who become the bullies, the dictators, the horrible rulers, the bad bosses, the assaulters. The list goes on of what they could do that's wrong. I think the list of what they can do if they have all of their needs met is also amazing, and that's what I would like to give the Howard County community, but the country at large, I guess, is the freedom to choose what they want to do, and everybody here enables that for them.
I'm in an interracial marriage. My husband is white. And so if you asked me that question 20 years ago, we just celebrated our 26th anniversary, but 20 years ago, we probably both of us would have answered, everyone should marry someone of a different race. This world would be a better place, because marrying someone, for those of you who are in any kind of a committed relationship, is more than just saying, my best friend is black, so I'm not a racist, or my daughter's best friend is gay, so I can't be homophobic. You actually have to live with someone to negotiate a day-to-day. You actually get to see your shared humanity, but also see the things sometimes have something to do with the cultural background, sometimes not, that they drive you crazy the next day. But that's a kind of level of interaction people can have. So I didn't really, the two of us were saying that sort of half jokingly. And now I see a little bit more nuance in that, even if the interracial marriage rate has been becoming much, much more commonplace. People don't even bat an eye. My husband and I can walk around in Howard County, no one even look at us. And when my in-laws were still alive in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, it's a little bit different kind of place. I always felt like I stood out, even though no one was probably actually looking at us, but I felt uncomfortable being there and being uncomfortable in that interracial relationship. This was not from 50 years ago, this was from 20 years ago. And Loving versus Virginia was not that long ago. It was right around time when I was born, actually. But I see Howard County as a beautiful place with diversity in all different types that we can celebrate. If I could say one thing that I wish this could be even better to make it a more ideal kind of place is we go beyond the superficial diversity, meaning skin deep or other kinds of identity or socioeconomic and background, profession, and your immigration status and all that. Because within each category, first of all, there's intersectionality. Sometimes it's kind of hard to acknowledge that, or we always miss out on something. That conversation can be lost a little bit. And then more importantly, to have nuanced discussions. Because within diversity in Howard County, if you look from a certain distance, it looks very diverse, very integrated, but there are pockets that are segregated by income. A lot of people say, oh, our schools are all integrated by race. First of all, that's not entirely true. If you look at the racial makeup and income level and background and needs of the students and the culture is a little different. So for everyone who's comfortable with the diversity and inclusion in Howard County, to have a little bit more deeper conversation, a little bit more uncomfortable conversation, I think is what make Howard County even a better place. And of course, everywhere we want it to be, but I know it takes some time to get there because, for example, Howard County supports LGBTQ study, but Florida is banning all kinds of books. So I think we gotta start somewhere. So we're just answering your question here in Howard County and pretend.
I think that I would go with my fellow panelists because I think my mind, and maybe it's just because of my different experiences, I think that because you asked about a utopia question, right? So utopia to me, and this may be corny, is that we are more loving to each other. And I think that with love, as my colleague said, when you are living with someone and you are living with someone in your community, you learn to appreciate their special gifts. And I think that when you learn to appreciate everyone's special gifts and know that everyone has a special gift, and my gift is not the same as yours, but it takes all of us and both of our gifts and all of our gifts to really, truly make progress happen, to make us successful. And when we truly appreciate that, then that to me is what utopia is. And that means that all the other things, because it's utopia, we know that that's not going to happen, but all those other things are not going to matter because I am really just loving you. And just like we love, well, we hope that everybody loves their children, and we appreciate that. And I think that when we come from that space, then we start looking and trying to meet people where they are. We try to ensure that they have the resources and whatever they need in order for them to be successful. Because if they're not successful, I'm not successful, we're not successful, right? So again, I mean, I guess it's kind of similar to maybe what the governor is saying, because he's going back to don't leave anyone behind, but that truly is it. So I always like to think that we're all connected by this invisible chain, and that we carry each other and we're responsible. And that when that chain is broken and someone is falling down, then they are pulling on us, right? They're pulling on us because we're not helping them. And I've seen that over and over, especially, unfortunately, in the last probably 4 to 5 years in our society, that I see so much hate, right? I see so many people needing mental health, services, and we're not giving it to them, and they're resulting in, as what you guys are doing, right? As far as gun violence. But again, if we pay attention to some things, because we find that some of those things were already there. They were already there, but no one cared enough to just say, oh, they need something. They need something from me, right? No one cared enough to look online to say, why are these people bullying this little boy or little girl? Because they, that could result in something. When we have people online that's bullying little kids, and those little kids feel like they don't have any choice but to kill themselves, then as a society, I have to sit back and say, we need love, because that is something that will, to me, change. And I do believe that there are some communities that they feel that. It's probably smaller town communities where they get to know each other, but we so busy in our society now that we don't get to know people. We judge it. We look at the outside and we think, oh, okay, they're supposed to be that way. I would tell you this, and this is something, and when I worked at Forest Park, one of the things I did, and again, I'm not going to say I'm an educator, because I don't want to disrespect any educators in the room, but when I'm called in to be a behavior counselor, I remember driving around the corner early in the morning. The corner store is selling potato chips and soda to kids coming to school, and I'm like, how can they learn with potato chips and soda? So I said, I rolled down the window and like, can you please put that back? Come on, we going back in that store. And I fussed out that corner store owner, because I was like, please put a sign up and don't feed my children that. After school is fine, but don't do that to my babies. They cannot learn if they're not feeding their minds. Let's find something in the school for you to eat, right? Many of the people in the school thought I was crazy. It was like, do you know somebody may hurt you? And I was like, no, we need to get back to the community loving each other. That's what you do. It takes all of us. Again, it may sound corny, but it works. It works. Okay, because the one thing, none of those children, and they were in high school, none of them disrespected me. None of them said, why are you throwing, Mrs. Scates, why are you throwing away my, my potato chips? No one said that to me. None of them. They said, okay, here, take this apple. But again, just love. It works. It really does.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the online space? Do we have any questions in the room? I see. Well, I saw both of you at the same time. Okay, we're going to go right here. Yes. I haven't seen it. Oh, the question was about the Maryland school report cards that just came out today. Apparently, the numbers for Baltimore City were very, very low, and heartbreakingly so. And the question was, can we comment on that? As a professional educator, having worked in many different jurisdictions, I would love to tell you that that is shocking. But it speaks to the systemic nature of the systemic nature of the denigration of education, right? Our Baltimore City population is one of our most vulnerable. They're very vulnerable socioeconomically. They're very vulnerable socially. And unfortunately, they do get the short end of the stick when it comes to so many things. There's so many things in the Baltimore City system that we would never allow here in Howard County. But unfortunately for years, particularly under our previous governor, for years, that kind of educational neglect was brushed aside. and the resources that are necessary in order to help overcome the systemic issues that are in Baltimore City were specifically withheld from Baltimore City. So you can see this as what happens when you have a vulnerable population and resources that are restricted from that vulnerable population due to political gamesmanship. And this is what happens. What I firmly believe is that with our new administration, with Wes Moore, we're going to see different outcomes. He's already talked about putting more resources into bridging the gaps that exist in Baltimore City. It's going to take time, though. So one of the things that I would love is if we could give patience and space. Rome wasn't built in a day, and these years of educational neglect won't be overcome in 1 year. But I do believe that with the current administration and their pledges to put more resources where these vulnerable populations exist, I do believe that that's going to start closing and narrowing the gaps and start uplifting vulnerable populations in Baltimore City and all over our state. Yes, you have a question.
LGBTQ students being bullied. So there's statistics tracked by each school, and they have to report that to the U.S. Department of Education because of the Civil Rights Division. Help me out here, lawyers. Every other year, they report bullying data, reporting disciplinary data based on different identities and usually racial groups and the students with special needs. And there's always disparity. So for the LGBTQ students, unfortunately, that kind of data isn't included because you can't ask people, can't ask a kid, are you trans or are you gay? We do have data. Those are from surveys done by outside groups. The Trevor Project is one of them. And the GLSEN is another one. It stands for, Gay Lesbian Educators Network. So it has been a 26-year survey every other year. They do survey tens of thousands of LGBTQ students around the country in schools and ask them for their experience. There has always been heightened disproportional representation of being bullied, intimidated by students and staff alike. So in Howard County, what we're trying to do is to have a local survey like that. There's no data, there's anecdotes. There's a difference. We do hear students reporting being bullied. Some of them don't. And one of the, probably the most current debate is about if kids report being bullied, should the parents be automatically notified for their gender identity or sexual orientation? It's a very, very tricky line. You would hear people say, of course, parents have the absolute right to know everything going on in the school. Well, if you're a parent who will kick your kids out because they're outed by the school inadvertently, then I don't think that answer is that easy. So it's a long way of answering. There are definitely disproportionate issues these students are experiencing, and our struggle right now and the challenge, the opportunity is to collect data so we can show the community and show educators, funders to say this needs to be addressed because everyone deserves to feel safe, and that safety doesn't mean absolutely it's free from gun violence, but they're everyday bullying, microaggression from everyone. That's not, shouldn't be tolerated. Good question.
One more question, then we're going to go to Dr. Gray and then Mr. Latimer. Absolutely. Agreed. Um, the answer to that question is really difficult, but one of the things is that the opposite. I worked in PG County for many years, and one of the things. Oh, it was great. It was great. Don't get me started. But one of the things that we struggled with was the opposite that happened with some of the No Child Left Behind programs. One of the things that we experienced was if a school wasn't performing well, they would take the money and reallocate it to schools that were performing well, which basically meant that you were always going to constantly spiral with larger class sizes, less resources from places that already had a lack of resources. I do think that the one thing that I know that Mr. Moore brings is he is very systemic in his thinking. So unlike other folks that will just throw money at the problem, he is a planner, and that money will come with structure and with programs and with systems and with processes. And so in that way, that is why I'm very confident in saying that with him in control, he is going to not just throw money, but also be systemic in his thinking. Oh, paraphrase the question that was asked. Oh. Oh no, the question was basically, what good is it to just throw a whole bunch of money at the problem when there's no process or there's no systems to guarantee that that money is being allocated in a way that benefits the children the most? Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Gray. It's so. I will paraphrase the good Dr. Gray, who said that Dr. Scates is absolutely awesome and amazing. Wonderful student when she was in his class. Best student he ever had. And not only that, but she has the breadth of experience, and she is kind and compassionate and loving, and will do a great job on the Board of Ed. Mr. Latimer.
So first of all, thank you all for all that you do. It occurred to me as you were talking, you all are your own way on the front line of defending our democracy against a virus that is I worry that much as we feel comfortable in our town, so I wonder if your own perspective, suggestions or advice can be you as the antibody that the virus is disinfecting all the marginal, dehumanized. Because what's happening in Florida right now is a worrisome thing in terms of fascist takeover. Worry that we are not immune.
Ooh, all right. No. It's fine. It's fine. So, so the question is, from your point of view, how can we best help to ensure that complacency doesn't creep in? We've seen in other places in the country where complacency breeds, and once it breeds, that slippery slope of hate and disinformation comes in, and the attending virus that happens robs people of their rights and their abilities to live the same life that everyone else is able to live in this country. So
say education and grace. Education, if you're reading, you have empathy for other people, you pass on that information, you look at the whole world with that lens of I didn't walk her life, I didn't walk her daughter's life, but I have empathy because I've read books and I understand what it could be like to live that life, and spreading that with my kids and spreading that with my bubble first is the way I look at it. And grace meaning I can't affect the 30%, but I can affect the 70% who do possibly care, but they can't always come to everything. So everybody that we meet, again, that idea of I may not make it to every CARY meeting, but I'm subscribed to their newsletters. I know that they exist as an organization. I can pass that information on. And if somebody comes today to volunteer, you have 1 hour this year, that's great. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Meeting however people can get involved, we give them that kind of grace and love to join or to be a part of it. And I don't worry about the 30% that are spreading the hate, but I worry about the 70%, the friends that I know, the people that I know, and just spreading that outwards and letting that grow. Everybody here knows 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. You can spread to those people. And that's the barrier to all of those issues, I think, is for us, is to spread it in a way that's manageable, it's digestible, it's making things easier, it's making stickier messages, it's making our information palatable with graphics, with showing up in red shirts, showing up however we can, making CARY, in the newsletters, and making it everything we can do, something that people can grab onto and say, I've got this, I can do this, and passing that on and doing it with love and grace.
And I would build on that and say, reach out to the 20, 30 people you know in person. Get out of our little bubble a little bit. Social media is such a double-edged sword. We should use it to spread the information. Sometimes people use it to spread misinformation, but to organize, and when you try to get people to come to an event, there's no faster way than to post it on social media and all different platforms. But it does put us in that potentially very, very sticky situation of we're so addicted to that, all the likes, and we're wired that way. The dopamine squirt is, we can't resist that because we're just evolutionarily cannot resist that. But that really traps us in our little bubble. Ezra Klein's book about why we're so divided, I forgot the exact name, gave very, very many great examples of how some random things, and if you divide people into teams, all of a sudden they could hate each other so much because it's this team mentality, and social media exacerbates that so many, many times. Talking to individual person in person, in face-to-face, or even pick up a phone. I still call people more than I email them. It's so, sometimes it's so much harder because you're more vulnerable, but it's also easier because there are things people can't say to you to your face. They will be happily type it up without even thinking. A lot of times they're not even typing it. I think it is probably just overestimating what the process looks like. And also to argue a point takes a little bit effort when and that process is helpful too because it clears our own head and we're not always right. Maybe to hear a different perspective in person can help us, not just rationalizing, oh, everyone absolutely agrees what I said. I'm brilliant. That feels good. We don't all want to believe that, but that's not true. And to have this democracy really does need to survive on the messiness of all of us looking at each other in the eyes and say, okay, how do we get this to work? We don't have to love each other or like each other all the time, but we need to learn how to live together. And on social media, we can't live together. In person, we have to learn how to do that.
One thing I always say is that bad things happen because good people stand back and don't do anything. I know a lot of good people. I see on the news all of these random folks doing some hideous things, but for me, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't have any statistics by it, but I think most people are genuinely striving to be good, right? And I think that, again, the people that get that squeaky wheel that are causing harm, are just miserable, hurt people that like to hurt people. And I think that sometimes I've seen it where people, just good people, stand by and is like, I don't know why they said that. And they allow things to happen. I think my colleague said, would encourage you to use your voice. Of course, always be safe. I want to say that, always be safe, because there are real issues and people can get harmed. But oftentimes I find bullies will back down when you approach them or even ask them to repeat themselves. Like, can you explain that one more time so I can understand? And then when they explain it, they'll just stop, right? And I think that sometimes we just need people just to stop and think about what they are saying. One of the things I used to tell my boys when they were in school was that why not, they would talk about bullies. And I said, well, why not, because they had like 20 friends, why not make it a habit of being good? Let's make that the trend, right? Let's make that a trend, that we treat people the way we want to be treated, right? And so they started doing that, and sometimes they realized the bully was just fluff, and now the bully wanted to be friends with them, right? For whatever reason, right? So maybe that is what we should do instead of, I think in our society sometimes because of that squeaky wheel, we just keep talking about the bad people, and I think that we build them up. We give them energy. If we start just saying, okay, you go over here, all of us are going to do what we believe is right. And so that's what I would like for us to start doing that. And that's on social media too. Let's don't like the things that we don't like. Let's stop trying to fit in, but do what we believe is right, and to call out people that are being hateful, for no reason, right? So that is
Well, y'all, I don't know about you, but I am leaving this conversation with calls to action. I'm leaving this conversation with a heart that's completely full and a mind that is racing. And I am thinking constantly of how I can be of help. I want us all to thank our amazing panelists tonight. Let's give them another round of applause. And please, please, please remember that these organizations could use your support. Moms Demand Action, right there. You can just Google it. It's right there. Please, please, please support. CARY, HoCo, please, please, please support. And remember that Dr. Scates is up for confirmation, and there's a public hearing on March 20th, yes? So I know that I have personally fallen in love, and I know that you guys, I can see the smiles on your faces. So make sure that you let our county council know, either by writing testimony or making sure that you go in to testify. Let them know that Dr. Scates is someone that we would love to see on the Board of Education. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say, I'm Andrea Winter.
Come. Yes. No, talk on the mic so they can hear you a little bit.
Hi, my name is Andrea LeWinter. I'm with Moms Demand Action. Melissa and Robyn are our county leads, but I'm the legislative lead. And Melissa asked me to come tonight just to give a little, I created a worksheet, so I don't have to, a flyer, so I don't have to talk you through. But at the end, if you want, I'll put them back by all the yummy desserts. Here are the legislation in the current state assembly that is being considered, that's being supported by moms. We are very, very lucky right now that our entire Howard County General delegation for all three districts that Howard County covers are Democrats. So they would probably all support this. It's not that. But we have hundreds of bills that are trying to make it through our very, very short 3-month session. So if you can contact your state legislators and let them know these are your priority legislation, that can help push things over the finish line, because there's lots of great legislation out there, but it can't all get passed. And so these are the bills that Moms is supporting, and I gave you little updates and bill numbers. So if you can go pass that on to your legislators, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you. And friends, it's really easy. It's an email. It takes maybe 2-3 minutes of your day, but it can make a tremendous amount of difference. So let's thank our panelists one more time as they go to their seats. Thank you guys so very much. Now,